I can't believe I did that. That was so cringy of me. Hello guys, welcome back. It's Tyler, and I've brought my monotone voice as well as some dry humor for this video. Today we're going to be talking about how I started jiu-jitsu and how my first week or so of jiu-jitsu went. So think back. You're 15 years old. You don't really know what to do with your life. But you do know one thing. You are the toughest kid in school. Now, why are you the toughest kid in school? Because you wrestle, you have a girlfriend, and you're pretty good at classes, science, and whatnot. Does that sound familiar? Because that was me. I'm still that way, naturally. If you've seen any of my videos, I constantly tap my coach every chance I get. So, of course, I am the toughest dude around, still to this day. But how it first started was I was 15 and I thought it was very tough, and I learned I wasn't the toughest when it came to one sport known as jiu-jitsu. So how did that play out? Well, I started by playing video games a lot, like a lot of kids do when they're age 15. I owned an Xbox 360 and I bought a video game called UFC Undisputed. This was around 2008, 2009, and I played that game a lot. And I thought for sure that if I trained how they do in the video game, if I trained the martial arts such as jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, blah, 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 that I too could be a UFC champion. And so that was my goal. I saw in the game there was this thing called jiu-jitsu, and there's this also thing called wrestling. But, you know, at 15 years old, I'm basically an Olympian at this point. So I don't need any more wrestling. I need to get this thing called jiu-jitsu in my life. So I Googled jiu-jitsu gyms near me, and I lived at the time in a small town of about 20,000 people. Now, luckily, I did know that we had a pretty accomplished fighter in my town, known by Brock Larson, former UFC veteran, current jiu-jitsu coach, MMA coach, etc. He had a school, or at least he was coaching us at the school. He was involved in the school. Kind of depended if he was it depended on if he was in a fight camp or something like that. So I figured out about this school, and it was called Ultimate Martial Arts. So of course, that's where I had to be. UMA, Ultimate Martial Arts. Because if you look at me, and then imagine me with a hell of a lot more hair, you too can picture an ultimate martial artist. So what does an ultimate martial artist do? Well, ask my mom if I can try jiu-jitsu. I don't even call the gym myself. She calls the gym for me. So she calls the gym. This guy called Jared, who is actually the main instructor at the gym, says, "Oh, you have a 15-year-old son? Okay, yeah, sure. Bring him to adult jiu-jitsu, whatever. He can try on Tuesday." I was stoked. And what do you do when you're stoked about trying jiu-jitsu? The first thing you do is buy a tap-out shirt. And that's exactly what I did. I bought a white tap-out shirt from the local mall, and I thought I was so tough wearing that thing around. I swear I wore that thing more than twice a week because I had to let people know that I could tap you out. Now, I didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu. I didn't know how to do a submission. If you told me to try and do an armbar, I couldn't replicate that. I had no idea how to do an armbar. I mean, I knew at that point I just had to pull the arm because I saw it in the game, but I didn't know how to set up anything. So, yeah, I had a tap-out shirt. And that came back to bite me in the butt. Now, how does that happen? Well, I went to my first adult class. Again, I was 15. I showed up to the gym as Jared instructed. And I wasn't even on the mat yet. I was in the lobby. And I was told that I just had to wear some athletic clothing, you know, typical for a sport. You don't have a gi or anything. So I had my tap-out shirt on, and I had some board shorts on that you'd wear to like the beach so you can get in the lake. That was my form of athletic clothing in my mind. I thought it was a pretty good idea. Yeah, I went to a jiu-jitsu gym where everybody knew submissions, fairly good I'd say, and I wore a tap-out shirt. Again, I didn't know anything. And Jared comes out into the lobby, and he looks at me, and he says, "I think you should train at the kids class instead." I can't believe I did that. That was so cringy of me. I went to the gym, and that wasn't a very short drive for us. I mean, it was only 20 minutes, but still 20 minutes to show up for a gym event to try out a new class. And the first impression I give him is that I'm kind of a punk, obviously. I'm wearing a tap-out shirt, and he definitely looked at the shirt before he looked at my eyes and told me to try kids class. Yeah, that's what I did. I listened to him and I went to kids class. Imagine the first day, what did I do? I learned a mounted armbar, and I thought I was so tough. Once I knew a mounted armbar, of course, I could take down anyone. Greco-Roman champions, I could definitely take them down and armbar them. I still do it. Watch all my videos today. All I do are armbars. You know, that's my bread and butter. Definitely not a guillotine. Never heard of it. So I learned a mounted armbar, and I thought it was pretty cool. That was pretty tough for knowing that. And then I tried the rolling class. That was kind of weird to me that it's called rolling. It still doesn't make any sense why it's called rolling. I decided to try it. I tried rolling, and how does my first roll go? Well, think about it like this. It's a kids class, so their parents are watching their kids. I'm 15, so I'm on the upper age bracket. Usually about 16, 17-year-olds start training with the adults anyway. And I roll with this other kid about my age. His name is Josh. He was a little younger than me. And I take him down because I'm a gold Olympian wrestler. And I land in his guard. And the first thing I do is I think back to the UFC video game. And I'm thinking, what do they do in the game when you're in this position? Well, you can't punch. I understood that much. But I thought it'd be a good idea if I started slamming him instead. So I picked this dude up by his gi, and I'm not joking about how high I'm picking him up. I'm actually thinking it's like the UFC video game. I pick him up about to my shoulders, and I start slamming him, but not full force or anything. I'm landing with him. I'm landing on top of him, and I do about 2 or 3 times before Jared looks at me and he's like, "What the are you doing over there?" I'm like, "Jiu-jitsu? What does it look like?" And quickly I figured out that was not supposed to be allowed. So again, I had that first awesome impression of wearing a tap out shirt to a gym I'd never trained at with 0 jiu-jitsu experience. And 2, my first roll, I'm what you now know as the Spazzy white belt because I'm slamming dudes from guard. Yeah, not very cool of me. So my second roll was with I think it was a 12-year-old or something named Nathan. And this is where I learned I wasn't very tough at jiu-jitsu, or at least I wasn't the best. He, again, like I said, was a younger kid, and I decided that I was going to take him down. I was going to just try and pass and get to mount. I had no idea how to pass. I just knew how to do a mounted armbar. So I take him down, and this 12-year-old green belt, he puts me in a triangle and he taps me, and I felt so embarrassed. How can a 12-year-old beat me? I'm going to be a UFC champion one day. I can't have this. So yeah, I lost to a 12-year-old, and I did some other rolls. It's not like they were much success either. I remember I got standing guillotined by somebody. That's how you know you're very bad, if you lose to a standing guillotine. And it wasn't a very successful day, but you better believe it, I thought I was so tough. I was willing to tell everybody on my MySpace that I trained jiu-jitsu. I changed my background on MySpace to say things about, you know, whatever jiu-jitsu related things there were. I edited my entire page. I even remember on my page that I said I trained guerrilla jiu-jitsu because that's the form of jiu-jitsu they had at the gym under Dave Camarillo. I was a certified badass. And my second day at the gym, not much better than the first. I learned whatever move on that day. And when I went to rolling, I went with the other kid's instructor. He was a purple belt. His name was Matt. And at that time, I just took him down. That's all I knew how to do, really. Wrestling. Took him down. So easy work, by the way, Matt, because I was a kid and I took you down. He's an adult. And I got in his guard and I stood up. And again, from the UFC video game, I remember seeing that if you wanted them to stand up, you could kind of like signal the referee, hey, stand him up, because I didn't know how to pass his guard. And I stood up and I was waving him up like, come on, let's go, stand up. And he looks at me like, what are you doing? There's clearly no referee. This isn't a match. And I was waving this dude up to stand up with me. He didn't stand up, so I went back in his guard, and I think I got armbarred or something like that. Not very glorious, but, you know, it happens to us. So really, that's how I started jiu-jitsu. I started with a video game. I thought I was the toughest kid in school. I got a tap-out shirt. I went to the gym. I got submitted by a 12-year-old. I slammed some people, got some takedowns, and ultimately embarrassed myself for my first time. If you liked the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'll try and do things like this in the future again when I see fit. But otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching. Really appreciate that.